Good afternoon or good morning, depending where you're at, everybody. This is WoofDriver live once again on our weekly vodcast podcast. So before I go any further, if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, go ahead and do it in the note or in the section that where you're watching this, the comment section, and hopefully we can address it during the show if you're watching this live. That's the goal. So real quick before I start, we are setting up here. This is from last Friday. We actually did. I've wanted to implement this for probably better than a year. So it takes me time to implement procedures dealing with the dogs, usually because a lot goes into it. Always about the first thing is about the dog safety, and I won't do anything if there's any questions. The second thing is their comfort, enjoyment level. That's always paramount too. So what I've designed here, and it's a little hard to see what's going on, especially on my point of view, but I'm going to explain it to you. There's 3 dogs running. I call this the WoofDriver Relay Pyramid. And what I mean by that is, first of all, the Iditarod, before the Iditarod, the Great Race of Mercy, they call it, where all the dogs actually relayed to get the anti-vaccine, if I'm saying that right, or the medical, the vaccine, basically. They need it to the village in Nome, Alaska, because people were dying from this diphtheria, a disease, and the only way to combat it was to use this vaccine they made, or this potion they made, this medicine, and they couldn't get it to Nome because of the conditions. So there were no, of course, they didn't have vehicles like we do today, but there was no reliable way of getting it there, and without it, more people would die or suffer from this terrible outbreak they had. So what they did was, and this is, the Iditarod is really based upon this, what they did was they got, it was one of the big mushers back then. I forget, I think he was maybe Norwegian, I don't know, but he was in Alaska, and he suggested, let's get sled dog teams to relay, because it was over 1,000 miles. So today they do the Iditarod race. I believe it's to commemorate this. Some people say it is, some people say it isn't. And what happens, they run the dogs over 1,000 miles in the course of, like, they're doing 100 miles a day sometimes. So it's like 8 days, 10 days, 12 days, whatever it may be. And that's what happened back then, but they used different dog teams to relay that far, maybe to cover better time, etc. And they got the potion to the Nome village, and they were able to save lots of people. So it was really interesting. It was a need. Remember, sled dog travel dates way back. I mean, some people say thousands of years ago, before, I guess, humans evolved fully, caveman, whatever. People were, back then, who knows? I don't know what they call them. But they were using these dogs for transportation. That's what they say. There's different arguments on that, and I'm not a historian, so I can't give you an actual factual premise on it, but you can look it up on the internet and get an idea for it. I hope to actually do some articles on it, because it's really fascinating and interesting, but nobody seems to have a solid date. They argue on it. You know, was it thousands of years ago, really, or is it just in the past few hundred years? But in any case, they're so important, sled dogs, at the time, because they were one of the most reliable forms of transportation. They were possibly there before any other forms of transportation. So what you see here, the WoofDriver Relay, and again, I'm calling it a relay. That's what the dogs did on the Great Race of Mercy. That's what they call it, where they got the antitoxin or a vaccine, whatever they call it, to Nome, Alaska. It was a relay. So I'm calling this a relay pyramid. So if you can see from my point of view, where I'm wearing the camera on me in this video that we're showing, there's 3 dogs. And you're like, where's Lola? Because Lola's not there. I don't know if you can tell that from behind. It's actually Nikita, Cyan, and Inyo. So it's 3 dogs. My team and I ran the 4 dogs, Lola, Nikita, Cyan, and Inyo. And then, because we had a heavy week of running last week, then we took Lola off. So Lola is the biggest couch potato I have, basically. Inyo's up there, but Lola is there. The Inyo and Lola are very similar in that regard, which is cool because Nikita and Cyan are the speed demons. So what I've wanted to do, and even with other dogs, even if I had 4 tip-top performing dogs that were all about pulling and running, not any kind of resting to them, I would still like to do this because there's always different fitness levels. So I take the 4 dogs and run 4 to 5 miles. Return, or my van, my wingman, I call him, who drives a van, meets us at the next destination up the trail. And then we drop off or rest the least engaging dog, or the dog that I think would need to rest. Then we have 3 dogs. So I have a different bar, as you see here. Nobody's ever seen this bar before, except for I did a preview probably a year ago when I was developing it. So I have a lead dog. This was the most challenging mushing bar. Again, I call them mushing bars. They're not ropes like traditional sled dogs. They're on bars to keep them basically in a smaller footprint. So I'm welcome pretty much on all bike trails and almost all parks that dogs and bikes are welcome, because there's no way the dogs, no matter how good I have a lead dog or whatever dog I have, is going to keep it perfectly straight the whole time. So they meander some when they're on a rope. When they're on my mushing bar setup, they can't meander at all. So they can't get in anybody else's lane. They can't interfere with anybody, any other dogs, any other animals. They're under my control 100%. And this is still a great way of giving them the physical exercise they need. It's not as demanding because they don't have to propel the vehicle, because different vehicles, depending on what I'm riding, what I'm driving, they can't propel because sometimes they're too heavy, etc. But this is, and they're basically they're not getting the leverage that they would on a dog sled, or they're not using a full harness. So it's not about fully engaging like that. It's about adventure. It opens the door to having almost any dog at any life stage, even my 14-pound Chinese Crested I built some of my rigs for. But in any case, this 3-dog bar was so, I guess, challenging to build, because when you have the 3rd dog, you put her in front, and the bar, it needs to be kind of suspended. They're all cantilevered. There's no weight on the dogs whatsoever. But if it would come up the center, it would be hitting her in the butt, basically. So it has to be above her. So that was the challenging part. Hard to explain here. Hopefully I'll do a video on that. That was the challenging part, to get just one dog. I mean, I could have run the dogs in the 4-dog setup and just taken one dog off, but I wanted it to be really refined and really, I guess, designed for this whole WoofDriver relay pyramid activity I'm doing. So I've got Nikita in the front, and this gave her a little bit of a different feel. She was looking around like, where's Lola? Where's my partner? And it's good to do different activities, different setups with the dogs, so they basically become desensitized to it. So, wherever you put them, okay, let's go, Dad, whatever. And my dogs are so used to it, they're like, whatever he throws at us, we deal with. It's kind of cool, though. It really helps build that bond and the teamwork aspect of the dogs and the musher, the dogs and me. Nikita's in the front, Inyo and Cyan are in the back. What happens is, so we've dropped Lola off after her first 5 miles. We're going to go another 2.5 to 3 miles, so 7.5 to 8 miles total for the 3 dogs that are still on the WoofDriver relay pyramid. Once we get to 8 miles, we're going to put Inyo in her resting spot up in the van, and then I've got 2 dogs. So then I actually change the pyramid, the layout of the bar again. So there's only 1 dog on each side. Now, this is a really good learning point, or something you can take note of. A lot of people say to me, well, I've got dogs and sometimes they're not great together. They're confrontational. Huskies can be that way, especially. So Cyan and Nikita, who are the last 2 girls standing that are going to be participating in the WoofDriver pyramid at the same time, running just those 2 with me, they can be a little confrontational with each other, because neither of them are spayed. They will be, soon to be. But that extra hormone and that extra everything going on with them actually causes them to be more competitive and more alpha-like, you could say, because that's how they would be in nature, and they would be trying to get a male to impregnate them, basically. So they've got that mentality, that train of thought. So they're most likely to be more confrontational with each other than, for instance, Inyo and Lola, because they're both spayed, they're both fixed. So they don't have any, they don't have that, they don't really have any of that competitive nature like that with them, or that confrontational nature. They're just, that's also, part personality, but a lot of the everything going on in their body makes for more of the possibility of confrontation, little spats, etc. And sometimes they can get worse. These two, not so much, but I've been in the middle of a lot of confrontational huskies being very dominant, and males and females too. Just because you have a male and a female doesn't mean that's not going to happen. But these two females are, I would say, mild mannered still, but I want to keep everything as safe and good as possible. So avoid something before it could happen. So by them being staggered, I stagger them. I don't have it on screen here. You're only seeing the 3 dogs. When I get down to 2, and I stagger the 2 dogs a little bit, so their heads won't be as close to each other, so less of a chance of them being confrontational. It gives them more of their own lane, and they become competitive. They become confrontational over territory, etc. There's a few reasons they could be confrontational. It's usually over other dogs, males, because they're female, over territory, over food, etc. So by being in each other's spaces, they'd be more likely to be confrontational because of their disposition to start with. So by staggering them, they're less likely, and they're also learning to be closer to each other gradually. So at some point, I might be able to put them, and I've done it before, put them together head to head. I usually do it after they're tired, less energy, less likely to be confrontational. And I know I'm a very cautious kind of guy because I've witnessed a lot. I've been there, done that. So I know some people might get in there, just put them together. And, unfortunately, some of this behavior with dogs especially can have lasting impact. So if they get really confrontational, they start nipping at each other, that could be, the end of it for pretty much ever. They could learn to get along, which I can teach them. But once you break that pierce that, no pun intended, pierce that barrier, it can be very problematic. But working together on a situation, on a rig, on a sled dog team like I'm doing here, then being gradually closer to each other helps them teach that behavioral aspect to we're on the same team. Let's try to keep it cool, etc. There's sled dogs in the Iditarod, and I'm sure this happens probably every race they have, that will fight on the same team. And I know of somebody who ran the Iditarod, and they actually had to stop because their dogs got into such a big fight that they went to break it up and they got bit themselves, the musher himself. So just a little bit of background there so you understand. And these dogs are super athletes. And even without the hormones, they can still be very competitive once they're spayed or neutered, whatever. So you're always, and males, females together, that it can always happen. They're competing, and they're, that's the way they go. And that's their job. That's their life. So when they're out to defend their territory, what they think it is. So that's why it can be so rough especially when you're in a gut. I mean, just all everything as extreme as the Iditarod, that can happen. It can happen anywhere though, but just to let you know, even on full sled dog teams, there's confrontations amongst dogs. You have to know who you can put near each other, etc. So this 3-dog design really keeps it interesting. And when you see the 2-dog design, which maybe I'll do on the next podcast, I'll post everything. Haven't gotten to post this yet on social media, but a lot of people have said, well, I don't have 4 dogs. Will it work for 3 dogs? WoofDriver, your design. Will it work for 2 dogs? Will it work for 1 dog? Again, because this is motor propelled, though I didn't even need much motor, it will work for any amount of dogs, even a dog that can't propel this particular vehicle because they don't have to. They were because it was cool enough out, and they were just gung-ho, even though last week we did a bunch of miles. So Lola was like, I'll take the rest. Inyo, not so much, but I was doing my relay, my pyramid relay. She got in there, and she was a little confused. She's a more cautious dog. So she was like, "What are you doing with me, Dad?" And great, it's great for her, for all the dogs, to run in different configurations, to learn patience, to learn they can't always be out there, to learn they, have to rest and they have to do this, what or the other, all for the betterment of them and all for building patience, because that's so important, even though it's really tough with some of these over energetic dogs. So we are traveling along now. I did this locally. When I say locally, I travel the East Coast of the USA with my dogs to adventure. I call this all adventure mushing. And we did this locally because I didn't know all of this equipment is made for what I do by my specifications, but things are welded, don't know, especially that front dog on this 3-dog design. If she puts too much force on it, will it break? Now, we've done the best we could because you want to keep it light. Keep in mind, again, there's no weight on the dogs, but at some point, the bike could start to be, because as the bar gets longer, the leverage the bar has, it can start to bring the bike up the rear. I used to have to put some of my original designs, I used to have to put weights in the actual bike, because if I got off the bike would teeter-totter, would go up almost like a seesaw. So all that has to be taken into consideration. So there's a fair amount of engineering that goes into this, and none of us are college-trained, board-certified engineers. This is all from being out in the field, from understanding gravity, and most importantly, for understanding dogs and the kind of pressures they can put on the equipment. So that's why I work with a team, and that's why everything is thoroughly tested. But even though it's thoroughly tested to the point that even if things break, not going to hurt the dogs, but it will create other issues that we have to work through. A lot of times there's a lot of unintended consequences. Just like when you think you got a 4-dog bar, how can you make it a 3-dog bar? Oh, that's easy. But then you think, well, wait a minute, if the bar's low down and the dog's in front of it, it's going to hit the dog's going to hit the end of the bar. Oh, the bar's got to be elevated. Well, how do you get the bar in the air? So it was quite a feat of engineering. And so I'm getting off here. So the dogs obviously will go to the bathroom on the trails, and we go by. You can get a better view maybe of the bars. I've stepped around it there. They will, we always address that, and we'll always clean up after the dogs. Whatever the trail wants us to do, we do. When I run them, like I was running on the farm yesterday, those kind of areas, I don't need to clean up after the dogs, but I will follow all laws, and I hope everybody does. It keeps it a better place for all trail users. So my producers just let me know we've got a question or some questions, comments. So I'm going to address them now and see where we're at. So our first one is from Keith. Hey, Keith, I know all these are in one feed, so I know you're on YouTube because you comment and interact with me a lot, and I really appreciate that. So thanks for the question here. So Keith liked to see 2-dog design. I take my remaining husky to the husky adoption meet and greet. My current male Koala, I'm probably saying that wrong, had to interview a few females before he selected Anastasia. And cool names, love them. So yeah, I will show the 2-dog one also. So the 2-dog, it'd probably be great if you did a meet and greet and you were able to take the second dog out, because it would keep them close enough to each other, but not in each other's faces, so they didn't feel compelled to defend their territory, etc. But it's got them close enough to keep them together, but far enough to hopefully avert any confrontation. So I will definitely show some of that. I'll post some of that in the coming days. I hope to do that. I'm actually trying to make it a whole section on one of my websites so we can talk about this pyramid relay and about different dogs setting up for different amounts of dogs. And this comes in handy too as dogs get older. So your senior dog, the senior dog can do just 5 miles. We put that senior dog up, then I've got 3 dogs. And then the other dog behind her can only do 8 miles, put her up or him up. So it really works for a multitude of situations. But I really like the idea when you do the meet and greets to be able to put your dog that you currently have on one side, and then if the dog was picking another dog to be their family mate to adopt, you could put it on the other side. So that's cool. Thanks, Keith. Definitely going to show that. Really appreciate it. And there's so many different possibilities for everything I'm designing here. And Keith, being a Husky family, recognizes it. A lot of people see this as more of my videos go viral. A lot of people see this and they're like, what's he doing? That's so cruel. And they have no idea. And that's why I take the time to explain it, because, if you look at it, a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000 words. If you look at it and you're only trying to surmise it, you're like, what the heck's going on? That's cruel. They have no idea that, and nothing about dog sledding is cruel. It's about the people who do it can be cruel, and they get a bad rap because there's a bad person that does this here. Well, in almost everything in life, you could be, Mother Teresa and one of her followers, and just because of that doesn't mean you're good or bad per se. It's all in our actions and how we treat our furry family, and sometimes our training. So we know doing something could be too much or not satisfying them enough, etc. But a lot of people that do sled dogs, a lot of mushers professionally or that compete professionally, get a bad rap because here and there's people that don't respect their dogs like they should and do the right thing. There was somebody sent me, they know I'm the WoofDriver, and they sent me a link to one of the Iditarod competitors who had, I don't know if they won this year, last year, etc., but recently, and pretty much crying because tears of joy, but they stopped, I think, before the finish line, or they were at their last checkpoint, and they knew they were going to win. And he said one of his dogs, the lead dog, I think it was, had the posture and had the expression that they knew they were in the lead. They had done it before and they were going to win. And the moment they shared, it was just really touching. And you could see the love that this musher had for his dogs. And people don't understand the intensity of these creatures, of these animals. They're just so intense. And when they can do what their breed was bred to do, what they have instinctually in them, there's a whole new dog. I mean, that joy, you've opened up a box. You've opened up their heart, essentially, and you can't imagine what you get from that. So I got another comment here, a question, and I'd like to address that, and that is coming from Keith again. So I love Addie Nicole singing in the Fort Ariel video. Is she related to you or a friend? So it's funny. So I just posted, thanks for the great question, Keith. My latest video on social media is of Fort McHenry, which is local to us in Maryland. We did it for a pilot we're shooting, but it's actual breathtaking aerial, and it's, as Keith said, touching. It really is. I'm not a history buff like I'd like to be, but I'm very interested in history, and I love learning about it. And because I grew up in this area, I know, well, I don't know, but I know of Fort McHenry. I'm not as knowledgeable of it as I should be. So in the video, I had Addie Nicole, who is of a group called Halcyon. And Addie did a bunch of work for me. She's probably one of the best vocalists that I know personally, and I would say one of the best vocalists out there. She's amazing. Her range and what she could do. I've written a bunch of WoofDriver music, some of it parodied, some of it original, some of it patriotic. Like I did a whole group of patriotic songs of the USA, because the video was about Fort McHenry, and the Star Spangled Banner was included on there because that's what was written there by Francis Scott Key. So Addie Nicole, she's a heavy rocker. So she sings a lot of heavy metal. For me, she did a lot of dog related songs because that's what I wrote in these patriotic songs. So I don't know her as a friend. I had a business relationship with her, and that's how she became about. So she has literally done probably, I'm going to say, in excess of 50 songs for me. And I actually have a bunch of videos she did as well for WoofDriver. Of lately, she's really busy touring with her group, Halcyon, all over the world. So I'm not in contact with her as much lately. But I had come into contact with her somewhere along the line, and basically it was a business relationship. I explained to her I write a lot of what I call songs, a lot of stories. She turned them into songs. It's actually her and her husband. I think that they were, I don't know what they did, something with Blink 92 or Blink 192, it was a 90s group. And she's always been musically inclined and wanted to sing songs for people. And I gave her these stories that she turned into songs. So of lately, though, we were trying to get her, and you never know in the future, I do something I've done years ago called the Wolf House, where I actually take a musician in the back of one of the 2-seater, or I had a 4-seater dog cart, and they play guitar, play an instrument, and they sing a song. So it's like an unplugged or an acoustic version of popular songs, at least in my era, 70s, 80s, 90s, etc. And we were going to do some WoofDriver original tunes, but we never got that far. So I was getting local musicians to do their own work or to do popular songs from that era, from the eras that I mentioned. So we were hoping to get Addie to do it. We hadn't lined that up a few years back, but because she's so busy working. So hopefully in the future. But thanks, she's amazing again. And it was funny because when I asked her to do those, she's like, "You want me to sing a cappella, which means music without any lyrics, without any background music, all these patriotic songs." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Okay, cool." So I was associated, and I still am, with what we call the Presidential Pet Museum. I was a curator, and that's why those songs were done. Presidential Pet Museum is it lists every president. You can go to it on the internet. It lists every president, what dogs or animals they had. And when you go to the earlier days, George Washington, the early first presidents, some of the first, I forget up till when, a lot of the pets, a lot of the animals were actually, they needed them because they used horses for transportation. They didn't have cars back then, George Washington, etc. At some point, the dogs and the animals became more companions. And that's where one of the presidents, there's a story, took their dog during after World War II to one of the islands. I don't know. I can't remember exactly because it's been a while since I reviewed it. And they say they had to send, like the Fifth Fleet to find the dog because it got lost on the island, something crazy. And was it I forget, one of the other presidents, they actually had a bear at the White House. They used to have, where the Rose Garden, they used to have fencing, and they had a bear, and I think Congress made him donate the bear to the National Zoo in D.C. There's a lot of wild stories. And if you go to presidentialpetmuseum.com, you'll see them all in there. We actually, when I took over the museum, we actually got the original cowbell from the last cow to roam the White House lawns that the Rose Garden, I think it was, they would keep without a lawnmower because they would graze on all the grass there, etc. So Pauline, I think, was that cow's name. We actually have the cowbell from it. So that's pretty interesting. And the Kennedys, Jacqueline Kennedy was a big horseback rider. So they had a farm in Northern Virginia where they actually kept some of their horses, and they'd also bring them, forget one of the horses' names, they would live in the Rose Garden, the White House lawn, or the White House grounds, I should say. And Caroline, her daughter, I think showed this horse or took it around different places and rode it in these shows. So there's tons of information about this. Some of it, we would have to contact the presidential libraries for that president and to try to verify what's true and not true, because there's so many stories and it's not researched like you research when they do biographies on humans, more of that would be more thoroughly researched. So it's really interesting. So that's how Addie Nicole did some of that music, but I was involved with her doing the other music long before. But if you check her out on Halocene, which I had some links that I sent you, Keith, she goes so heavy metal, it'll blow your mind. Literally, you'll blow up. I think smoke will come from your head. She's singing so hard. So thanks for the great question. Appreciate that. So on the 3-dog design, we're still going. This was about a 45-minute run. Again, we did 3 miles. Now, the dogs were still cooking up that day because it was a different dynamic with going from 4 dogs, 3 dogs to 2 dogs, the dogs were actually more eager, I guess. I was changing it up. And that's why I say it's always good to change up your regiment, your routine. And that's why I travel up and down the East Coast with the dogs, because if we go the same trail every time, it gets a little redundant, a little monotonous for me too. But if you need to go to the same trail, there's usually a few trails in your area, so you don't have to go to that trail this week and go to another trail, which keeps it fresh for them. New animals come through there. They're going on the scent, because the scent of the area where they're at tells a story of where they're at to them, because they have such keen smell. They can smell, so they can their smell, their nose, their scent detection can tell the story. When I mean that, what I mean is they can know what was there in the past little while, what animals, maybe what transpired. They're very, very smart like that, and that's why they have such a powerful nose. But if I have to go the same trail, a lot of times I will reverse the trail. So if I start at one end and I'm going to the next end, I keep going. As you know, my wingman keeps picking me up, so I'm always trying new areas. But if I'm by myself and I have to park one area, nobody's going to move my vehicle, so I'll try to take the dogs one way, and of course I have to come back to get my van. But the next time we're at that trail, if I'm by myself again, I'll start at the other end of that trail. So it's always newer to them. You know, some of these trails are 5 miles round trip, 10 miles round trip. So I'm gonna go further than the trail has to offer, basically. So that's why I'll loop it, depending on, again, how many people are with me, if I'm able to park the car, or if I can move it along the trail. But always doing something like, if I'm on a training mission with the dogs, we're training and I'm trying to train them to heel, for instance. I don't do this anymore. I used to train the dogs to heel, my dogs. And so I'll go one way and then I'll reverse the way I go, because you keep going the same way, it's the same stuff to them. It's still the same. Their knows they were there, they know, but just reversing it a little bit can change the dynamic some, and keep them a little more entertained than just the same path every time. So also wanted to let you know, we're hopefully going to be experimenting in the next podcast or so. If you'd like to actually come on air, we're going to have it so I can have an iPad and have a direct conversation. You can look at me and I can look at you up on the actual screen and in the studio here. So I'll basically have an iPad with you on there, and you'll be able to see me on yours. You just need a good Wi-Fi connection and a relatively quiet area, and we can have a conversation so it doesn't have to be as choppy as it is today when I'm just talking to Keith, and you can be more direct maybe with my answers, and it can get into a conversation, basically. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to try to stay on air for another 15, 20 minutes today. So we filmed at after this run, the next day was Saturday, this was Friday, we actually went to my veterinarian's office, and my veterinarian's semi-retired, so it's a group of veterinarians at the office. And this particular veterinarian I've seen for multiple generations of Huskies. I've known him for, 25, 30 years maybe. And great guy and very knowledgeable, specializes in a few different areas of veterinarian medicine. And he does surgeries, he does it all. So he's like a wealth of knowledge. And we actually did some filming there. And we were also able to dive into some deep conversations. So hope to put that in the pilot. But today, I'm going to actually just get some shots for one of my dogs. And I keep all my dogs up on shots as much as possible. Not as much as possible. They are up on shots 100%. I never let it lapse within a day or two, especially important shots like rabies. And I know there's a lot of people out there that say, well, you can over-vaccinate. And there's that argument too, which I agree with. But, and what they can do, they call it pulling titers. They're blood titers. So they can pull the blood work on a dog some places, some veterinarian offices, and they can tell, does that dog need a certain shot, like a Lyme disease shot they have, or maybe kennel cough, or not for rabies. Rabies is I think it's probably required in every state. You have to give the rabies shot. But for a lot of these other shots, they can pull blood to see if they actually need that, or if they still have the properties in their blood that would ward off this disease, and they wouldn't need the extra shot, because people think the shots poison them, too many. And there's a lot of questions about flea and tick, because a lot of the flea and tick medicine can have adverse effects on dogs, like seizures and other issues. With me, I've been what I think is fortunate, because I've never really had any problems with flea and tick. I use the medicines out there. Some of them, they seem a little rough, but they do the job, because when you start getting infestations of fleas, and the dog gets bit by ticks and tick-borne diseases, as well as heartworm, I mean, they can be some devastating. They can have devastating impacts on the animals. So for better or worse, I give them, right now I'm giving them Simparica. That's been on that for a few years. Fortunately, knock on wood a million times, my dogs have never had any adverse reactions to any of the stuff. And I also give it to our little Chinese Crested, which is all 14 pounds of toy breed, and she's never had any adverse issues. Now, vaccinations, I mean, does it affect them later in life? Again, I've been through multiple generations of Huskies. I haven't seen it. I mean, something's gonna get us all. So every time I've lost a dog, it's never been related to any of the vaccines that I know of. But do they get other health issues? I mean, who knows? We don't know enough about humans to know everything with dogs, of course. But and what I mean by that is, we're constantly studying humans much more than dogs, because we're humans, and quite frankly, there's more money in it. So that's what drives a lot of this. And even with humans, they don't know all the ins and outs, and a lot of that is based upon individuality and hereditary, what's hereditary, etc. So some of that happens with dogs too, of course. So I say it's a big unknown. What I do is I just do all the shots, and I do the flea and tick and the heartworm. I do year round, because even then I've had dogs get tick-borne diseases. Luckily, nothing that's really affected them. But the flea and tick doesn't even cover all ticks. So, I mean, you have that issue too. So we got another question or comment. My producers let me know. So, Jay Caleb, 2TT. So thanks for the great question, Jay. I appreciate that. Have you considered running 6 dogs at a time? So love it, love it, love it. Great question. So I have, actually, and on some of my designs, I've made it possible to do that. I haven't actually run 6 dogs. I might have run 5. I've had 5 Huskies before, but I've never run 6. And the reason being, because I did run 5, actually. The reason being because my designs are so, my whole setup, my lifestyle is set for 4 dogs. That means when we travel in a van, there's 4 crates. To put another crate in there, which I did, is a lot of work. Then when you get to my bike designs, they won't all accommodate 5 or 6 dogs, but they will. The most I could max them out was 4 in the past. I've started working on 6 dog designs. But again, my lifestyle, the way we live, the way my wife and I and family, 4 dogs works for us perfectly. So that's why I stick to that 4-dog regiment. But sometimes I've had 5 at a time. I've had dogs, senior dogs, that they'll go for a mile or 2. So I bring them with me, and then they're in the van while we're getting the rest of our exercise. And a lot of times, I try to get them to go with me. I want all my dogs to always be a part of everything we do. But when my wife would be at home, I would leave our senior dog with her, and because he would get lots of lovin's. And when she wouldn't be and there'd be no one at home, I wouldn't want to leave him by himself. So he'd come with us, and he'd get a little exercise. I'd trot him lighter so he could get out there, and then I'd put him up in the van. And keep in mind, I'm always with, when I'm in my van, always with a wingman, so someone was always with him. I'm just like that. But I hope to do some 6-dog running. What I'd like to do is possibly get the shelters get Huskies, and they just can't handle them. And I'd like to work with them, maybe to run 1 or 2 with my dogs, because it's so easy with my designs to put a dog on there. They almost instinctually know what to do. The biggest fear is getting them over being near a wheel, depending. But now I've got different designs. They're not even close to the wheels. So now they've got to get over with the bar on top of them and being hooked to 2 points. And some dogs just get over the idea of being in a harness. But when you have other dogs, it helps them. So if I would go to a shelter or rescue and could pick a dog or two up just to run them around the block there with my dogs, it'd be a really healthy exercise for them and an enrichment psychologically and physically. And then they become more adoptable because they say, hey, you can bike with this dog. They know how to bike. And then people, when they come to adopt, oh, that's great. I love going on bike trails. I love running. I love doing jogging, whatever the case. Because hopefully people that get Huskies and high energy breeds dogs are physical or know how to give the dogs the physical exercise they need. So thanks so much for the great question. So you can see the design here because we're pulling, I think we're almost done on this run, and you can see the 3-dog bar design. And again, you see the pool noodles, everything's cushioned, and all the balls, the holy roller balls, and then you see me in there. Of course, I'm wearing a camera, I got a hat on, everything else, and trying to get a little video clip so I could post it there. But and you can see it's on my regular, what I call my electric dog sled on wheels, a regular trike, which is super lightweight and really adapts well to these mushing bar designs that I do. And we're watering the dogs here. My co-pilot, my wingman, I had a different wingman that day. I don't know if you can see him. Some of you may know that are familiar with me. His name is, I call him Big Jim, but Big Jim is the old wise man. He's been with me for many, many years. I think he's known all of my dogs. He's about 75 now. So he's a little, it's a little much for him to go on all the adventures we do now. He's gone on plenty with me in the past. But when I'm local, he helps out a lot, and I have him staying with each dog. So Lola's already in the crate there because she was the 4th dog that the dog I put up to run 3, and I'm checking on her. He's with her. Someone's always got to be with my dogs. I never let them unattended, no matter how many crates, no matter how many areas I have, whatever I got, etc. So now I'm putting all the dogs up because we're going to change the bars over to the 2-dog design, and they're great. And that teaches them, again, get in the crate, get out of the crate. They don't know when we're done or not done. It keeps them on edge, which is what you want. You want to always challenge them and have them expect the unexpected. Just like when I run dogs off leash, if I'm going in the same area, they will shortcut you. So it's kind of like you teach a dog to heel. You change directions on that dog, even though they're not on leash, and the dog will have to realize you change direction or you call their name. They should have their attention to you, and that's how you teach them. When you change directions, you put that unknown aspect, and they usually want to be with you. You're the alpha, and if they don't, you need to teach them to want to be with you. So when you make that turn, they know, hey, I'm supposed to make that turn, whether they're on leash or off leash. It keeps them looking at you and keeping their attention on you 100%. So if a squirrel moves to the right, they're like, I don't care. Dad's going to the left. Got to go. That's the way they should be trained. And that's the way I would train even Huskies to be off leash, which is really challenging because they're so prey driven. So that's Cyan I'm putting up in my van. These are different crates than the Roughland kennels you saw that Nikita and Lola go into, but they're all well-sized for each dog. And these have actually been crash tested, not by me, but fortunately. And I've got fans on the dogs, and of course there's air conditioning in there, because even though it's kind of cool outside, you can crack the windows or you can open them because I've got someone in the van. But depending on their state, they come back. Anything above 0 degrees is warm for them. So I've got the fans and ways to cool them down instantly, or as least as quick as possible. And those are just Milwaukee tool fans there. I know some companies make dog fans, but depending on the fit, you might have to use a tool fan. So I think that's about it. No more. We don't have any more questions or comments. Again, we hope to be live with being able to take other people on our actual broadcast and have conversations, etc. coming soon. So stay tuned for that. Also, stay tuned for our dog documentary. If you go to dogdocumentary.com, you'll see a lot there. And it tells a lot more about me, and it'll link you to different websites of relevance depending on what you're looking at and what you're looking for. As well as we're trying to do WoofDriver TV. We're mentioned it. We're made a pilot. That's what a lot of this stuff has been for of recent. A lot of my outings, like the Fort McHenry, Baltimore City, etc. So that's also a different aspect and a different view. I take you to the veterinarian's office, take you to the Baltimore City, Fort McHenry, as I mentioned, and even take you to what we're calling little wolf drivers, where I give the children a ride in the dog cart, let them meet the dogs, and talk to them about proper dog care, about sled dogs, and all the good stuff involved, which really makes it a learning experience for them. So hopefully, I always say, for the betterment of all dogs, because as they grow, they'll understand the respect for dogs. They'll understand maybe adding one to or more to their family, and maybe they'll long to be a veterinarian or volunteer at a rescue or shelter, etc. So I am the Wolf Driver, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can ask them now. I'll be on the air another minute or two. We will be back again next week, we hope to be. And when I say we, my producer, myself, as well as you, because you can come right into this conversation by email or contact me on social media if you're interested in that. You could be a part of our pilot program doing that. I can line you up, let you know what you need to do. Just need a good Wi-Fi signal and a good, reliable, quiet area, relatively speaking. So that's a wrap for today. Oh, by the way, this is going into the next video. This is just replaying the video. You can see how excited Cyan jumps up, says she wants to go, go, go. Well, I'm Wolf Driver, and I'm about to go, go, go. Have a great day, everybody. Look forward to seeing you on our next podcast, vodcast. Should be next Tuesday. Talk at you soon.